So welcome to our attendees. The room's just been opened, so you'll just be coming through now. So bear with me for the next few minutes. I'll just welcome everyone. You might hear me say the same thing repeatedly as more and more people come in. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today at this fourth in our community development series for the Forum for Open Research. We're very happy to have you with us today. You will notice that your videos are off and you are muted. However, you will be able to ask questions in the Q&A chat box at the end of the event. And if you have time now, please do add a little message in the chat box itself about you. And we like to know where everyone's from and we like to be able to welcome everyone. So please do feel free to add a little note in the chat box and say hello to everyone. We will be starting in just a couple of minutes once everyone has joined the room. We often have some latecomers who sneak in 2 or 3 minutes late, so we're just going to hold off for that for a second. And as I mentioned, in the meantime, please do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. We would love to hear from you and know where you're from. And also, if you have any questions in advance, you want to make sure are being covered, you can also add those now as well. So for those who are just joining us, once again, welcome to today's talk. We will be starting in just a minute once everyone is in the room. You will notice that your camera and your microphone are off, but you will have a chance to ask questions later in the event. Well, we can probably get started now because we've got a few housekeeping slides first. So first of all, welcome to everyone joining today's talk about copyright retention for authors. This is a very important topic and we're really excited to hear from our speaker, Johan Rooryck, today. It's a huge honor to have him here with us. But before we start, we just have a few housekeeping slides. First of all, for those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom, it seems slightly unlikely in this day and age post-COVID, but occasionally we do have people who are still unfamiliar with Zoom in particular. So we just like to run through some of the housekeeping features. There are Zoom features at the bottom. It is a movable window. If you use the little cross, you can move things around. If you have concerns about someone talking too fast, please do use the raise the hand icon and we will pass the message on to the speaker. If you want to introduce yourselves and leave a note of thanks for the speaker, or even just let us know how you're enjoying the event, please do put that in the chat box. That's the one with the little speech bubble. However, if you want to ask a question that will be raised and answered during the Q&A at the end of the event, please do put that in the Q&A box, as you see at the bottom. That's the one with the double speech bubble as opposed to the single speech bubble. If you do end up accidentally asking a question in the main chat, my colleague who is running the technical side of today's event will remind you to put it into the Q&A or add it manually herself. So moving on to the next slide. Before we start with the main event, the meaty topic of rights retention, just a brief overview of who we are and what we're doing and why we are hosting this event today. So I am the Director of Operations for the Forum for Open Research in MENA, and we are a non-profit membership organisation, a new initiative which we've launched to support the advancement of open science policies and practices in research communities and higher education institutions across the Arab region. So that's all 22 Arab states. We are working with various partners, including cOAlition to achieve this, along with other non-profit organisations in the open science sphere and UNESCO. Now, our goals currently are to support the advancement of open science, ecosystems and higher education and research libraries, to create accessible and localized resources relating to the implementation of open science policies and practices. So that's resources in English and in Arabic, to encourage the emergence and growth of a collaborative community of open science enthusiasts, for want of a better word, and champions across the Arab region, and finally to champion the development of right-to-left functionality in all open source and open science platforms and solutions to ensure that content can be used in Arabic as well as in English. Next slide, please. A little bit about what we do. Well, we have 3 main pillars of activities. One of these is the community development activities. Now, these include this series of workshops and webinars, the Community Development Series. We also have a number of working groups underway, and you can find more information about them on our website in case you're interested in what we're doing or want to support us and help us with these working groups. And finally, we also have a discussion forum. So if at any point, both during this event, but more generally, if you ever have any questions relating to any aspect of open science within the research ecosystem, particularly around the development and implementation of open science policies and practices, please do visit the discussion forum. Again, you can find that information on our website, and log in and drop a question, and either we or colleagues or other members of our community will dive in and try and help you. We also have the annual forum, and you can hear more information about that at the end of the event. We'll be talking in detail about our annual forum later. And finally, we have, as I mentioned, the production of resources and guidance documents. We are also in the process of launching a journal for open science and higher education in the Arab world. I'm very excited. We're working on that, and we hope to announce the first issue of the launch shortly. Also, finally, one brief point, if you enjoyed this talk and want to talk about it either during the event or afterwards on social media, please do use the hashtag so we can track engagement and retweet you and repost you on all our platforms. Thank you. So next slide, please. Now, without further ado, I will stop talking because I know we're not here to listen to me. We're here to listen to Johan Rooryck and talk with him, his huge background in copyright and rights retention more generally. And he's executive director of cOAlition S, which has been hugely important in driving open access practices and policies with funders in particular across Europe. So I will hand over to Johan, and he will tell us more about this incredibly important issue. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for inviting me to this forum. It's very important for us to reach out to MENA countries to create a global coalition to advance open access and open science. I will share my screen now and immediately go to the presentation. So I will be speaking about rights retention for researchers, what the cOAlition S strategy, the strategy that we developed within cOAlition S to make that possible. So first I will be speaking about cOAlition S and Plan S a bit. cOAlition S is an organization of basically a consortium of research funders worldwide that includes national funders from Australia all the way to the United Kingdom. It also includes the European Commission with the Horizon Europe framework that invests an enormous amount of money into research across Europe. We also have large charitable foundations on board, like the Wellcome Trust, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We also have a global dimension with Jordan, Zambia, and South Africa on board, and also the World Health Organization. To give you an idea of the strength of this consortium, we invest about 35 billion euros a year in research funds that we provide researchers with to do research, and the output of that is about 150,000 articles per year. That may not be much in view of, you know, the 2 million to 3 million articles a year that are being published in research, but of course these are very often the most visible articles published in the most visible journals, because there is the selection that has been taking place by the research funders. So Plan S, what about Plan S? Plan S is in fact the name for the plan that cOAlition S has put together to advance open access. Plan S itself is not a policy, it's a set of 10 principles with a guidance on implementation. So cOAlition S funders have agreed to implement these 10 principles in a coordinated way, but also, of course, always taking into account the local legal situation, because this is not the same in every country, so you cannot move in the same way in every country. So we move in a concerted way, in a coordinated way, but not necessarily at the same pace for all the aspects of policy that we are advocating. So it's in that sense, it's quite flexible. Basically, Plan S was devised with one single goal in mind, namely that with effect of 2021, all scholarly articles that are funded by public or private funds should be published in open access, and we don't care the color of open access. So whether it's gold or green or diamond, we do not care as long as the paper is in open access. What we do care about is how those papers are being made available. Namely, they must be made available in immediate open access with the CC-BY license, and I will speak about that in a minute as well. This is very important as well, because recently, last August, the White House OSTP announced that they would also require full and immediate open access. They call it public access in the US. This applies to 400 federal agencies and $150 billion of research funds. And this clearly echoes the plan as goal. So even if they are not member of cOAlition, as it's very clear that worldwide, this movement of research agencies to require that articles be immediately accessible in open access has become unstoppable. So, and it is important to have policies that are in line with that at every level, not just at the research funder level, but also at the institutional level, at the library level, and very importantly, at the individual researcher level. And this is something that I will also speak about today. Because let's go immediately to copyright and licensing. This is where the responsibility of the individual researcher becomes particularly important. First, about copyright ownership. Who owns the original copyright of the researcher's article? Well, in fact, in most jurisdictions, it's the author that does. Sometimes the institution that the author works for does, but in most jurisdictions, it's the author of the original work who owns the copyright. And copyright basically protects your work and stops others from using it without your permissions. You get it automatically, again, in most jurisdictions. But here I'm speaking for the UK, but this is true in 90% of jurisdictions in the world. So you have copyright automatically. You don't have to apply for it or have a fee. You write a work and you own copyright in that work. Now, what happens a lot of the time is that you can, as an author, transfer that copyright. If you sign a license to publish your research article, can you control the use of the content of the article? And that really depends. As a copyright owner, you decide what you do with your work. So you decide at the base how you license your work. So license your work is give permission for your work to be used in a specific way. So you can license use of your work if you own the copyrights, and you can decide how it will be used. What happens in practice is this. The publisher or the journal that you want to publish in presents you with the copyright transfer agreement on exclusive license to publish. And that includes permission for the publisher to publish the work, but also, and it's legally required for publication. The publisher has to ask you for some sort of license, but it also includes all sorts of restrictions on how the author is allowed to use their own work. So what happens in practice is that many people sign the agreement without looking. I mean, you know, most people, I always say, read their Netflix contract more carefully than they read a copyright agreement. And as a result, the author loses all their rights on the paper, and the publisher takes control of the rights of the work. And this rights of the work is quite invasive, actually. So it prevents you, normally copyright transfer agreements prevent you from reusing data in your article, but also photographs, images, tables, data, even data. They also prevent your work to be translated without their permission, or for you to reuse elements from that work. So for everything you do with what used to be your own paper, you now have to ask permission of the publisher. And this is sometimes couched in language that is a bit deceptive. So you, as the original copyright owner, are called the contributor, and the owner is automatically assumed to be the publisher. So this is very tricky, actually, the way this is phrased. You are not the contributor. You are the original copyright holder. You are and the owner. That is what you are originally. So by changing this language, the publishers give you the impression that you're only a contributor and they really have by rights every right to own your article. And this is simply wrong. So the bottom line is that at the end of the story, publishers have had no impact in the input in the intellectual content of the work. They demand copyright transfer of exclusive licenses. They are free to use that work in every way they wish without asking for your permission. While you, the author, who are the creator and original copyright holder of the work, are severely limited in what you can do with this work. You cannot reuse it. You cannot deposit it anywhere you want. You cannot even send it to friends. And you often have to publish the publisher for permission to reuse parts of your work. So this is a crazy system. I've often compared it to the following situation. You invite people to your house to decorate your house, strip wallpaper, or hand woodwork, and so on. You pay for service. They do the same basically with an article. With an article, you pay for a service. You pay for that article to be published. That is a service that is performed for you, or at least it should be. But that does not mean that when your house is painted, that you hand over the keys and that to the decorators and say, now, since you have painted my house, you can have the keys. In the same way, we should not be saying to publishers, since you have so nicely copy edited and typeset my article, you now own the article. When we talk about houses, this seems absurd. When we talk about articles, this is what we do every day when we publish an article in a commercial with a commercial publisher. So this is really silly. So this is where the rights retention strategy comes in. Rights retention strategy is in fact part of the 3 routes that we have to compliance. The first route is publishing in full open access journals. The second one is publishing subscription journals, which is the hardest part. The third route, which I will not talk about today either, is journals under a transformative arrangement. So those are the 3 routes that we have to move to open access. But the tricky part is this one, the route for subscription journals, because subscription journals, as you know, have a subscription, they have a paywall, so you cannot have access to the article unless you have a subscription or you have access to a subscription via your library. Still, we as funders will ask you to publish that paper, not behind the paywall, but in open access. So what we ask you to do in that case is to make the author accepted manuscript instantly available in a repository, in a public repository. This is not financially supported. We ask you to do this on the basis of the rights retention strategy, which I will talk about in a minute now. So very formally, this has to do with Planners Principle 1. Authors and institutions retain copyright of their publications. All publications must be published under a public license, preferably CC BY. Now, what has happened, what the point is, and this is also why I'm here today, is that authors do not always realize that they are the original copyright holders of their papers. We have evolved to a situation in the last 30 years where authors assume automatically that the publisher will hold copyright, and that is the way things are. But this is far from the truth. As I said, the copyright owner decides how to license the work, and a researcher who grants a CC BY license to their work keeps sufficient intellectual rights to reuse all materials in it and to share it in a repository with anyone else. So this is very important. Assigning a CC BY license to your work as a researcher determines how you want that paper to be used by others. That is you assigning that license to the paper, and that CC BY license becomes an inherent part of the paper or of the version of the paper that you assign it to. So we believe very strongly that open access starts at the source with the author who stops to give away their rights. This is where it starts. This is where open access starts. Because if you don't do it as an individual researcher, the publisher will certainly not do it for you unless it is an open access, full open access publisher. So we ask that authors who want to publish in subscription journal that they publish a copy of the author accepted manuscript in a repository immediately on publication. But authors, of course, we know this, authors often sign these copyright transfer agreements, as I said, so often blindly, and those copyright transfer agreements prevent you from depositing a copy immediately. So that puts the author in a double bind. The rights retention strategy is designed to break through that double bind, namely, coalition as grantees are required via their grant conditions that the prior CC BY license is applied to any future manuscript of the AAM. So basically what we say to researchers is, we give you money, and in the contract of that money, it is already stipulated that everything you write on the basis of that money has a CC BY license attached to it. So that's the first condition. Of course, publishers don't know that you work for a funder. And so you have to inform the publisher as well that you are working under those conditions. And you can simply do that by asserting as an author the application of a CC BY license to retain sufficient rights. And this is something you can do independently of whether you have a coalition as grant or not. You can also do this on an individual basis. You don't have to be funded by a funding agency to do that. It is your individual right to apply a CC BY license to any article you write or the AAM of every article you write. Why do we say the author accepted manuscript? Because we think we had the intention to say, look, publishers, we will claim the rights for the author on the author accepted manuscript, and you can have the rights on the version of record. So the version of record is the version that is published on the publisher's site, on the publisher's journal. The publishers didn't like that compromise, but whether they like it or not, this is what we require. And more importantly, this has legal consequences, because since the CC BY license on the future AAM is the first license that is in place on the author accepted manuscript, it is in place prior to the publisher agreement. So it has legal precedence over any conflicting language in that later publication agreement. And this is very important. And this, by the way, has not been contested as a legal precedent by the publishers, because this strategy is now in place since 2019. And it has not been contested by the publishers. So rights retention is based on a simple principle, very simple principle. Peer-reviewed article, author accepted manuscript is the ownership, intellectual creation of the author, and it belongs to them to third ownership. You apply that CC BY license to the AAM. We strongly believe that publication services do not entitle the publisher to ownership of the AAM, which remains the intellectual property of the author. Funders and universities should ensure that their researchers are not deprived of their essential intellectual rights. And universities themselves should also think that, you know, the intellectual creations of their researchers also are theirs. I mean, they should also protect their own intellectual ownership of the articles that their researchers produce. So it's basically a communal effort, not only of individual researchers, but also of the community that the researcher belongs to. So what do authors need to do? What do we ask authors to do? Basically include this language with the first sentence included or not. But of course, as research agencies, we want that first sentence to include it. If you want to apply it individually, you don't have to include the first sentence about the organization name and grant. But the essential sentence is, a CC BY license is applied to the author accepted manuscript that arises from this submission. So not on the intermediate versions, not on the initial version, but the author accepted manuscript that comes out of this submission will have a CC BY license on it in accordance with the grant's open access conditions. And that allows you as an author to make the article available in a repository, a public repository, where it will be available in open access at the date of publication. So this is very important. This is the way it goes. And then if there's any problems, you can contact the funder, or you can contact me, or you can contact cOAlition if you have any problems with this, because publishers do not particularly like this strategy. Something about CC BY license, because we often get the question why we have chosen the CC BY license. Well, first of all, CC license is a public copyright license that enables free distribution of a published work. I often get the questions, well, where do I apply for this? Well, you don't, there is no special place or building where you apply for this, or a special email you need to send. All you need to do is say, I apply a CC BY license. It's a public license. So it gives a CC license, basically stipulates what other people can do with the work. So it gives other people the right to share, use, and build upon the work that the author has created. As you can see, you have CC0 there in the left margin, in the right margin, I'm sorry. CC0 means that anybody can do whatever they want with the work. That's completely free. CC BY means that you can use the work, but that you have to cite it appropriately. So CC BY is actually closest to what is to academic practice. When you cite someone else's work, or when you cite ideas that somebody else has developed, you cite their work appropriately. So you have to give appropriate credit to the original ideas. And also, if you change the work, you have to indicate how it has been changed. So this is the license that is most in line with academic practice, and all the other licenses are much more restricted. So as you can see, you go all the way to all rights reserved copyright, which is the least open, and which requires people to always contact you about reusing the work. But in the meantime, you have a number of other options that are stipulated there, but that are quite restricted. So there's share alike, which is still good, which we also allow as cOAlition as. But then non-commercial, for instance, is not something we allow, because non-commercial, for instance, would prevent, if your article allows someone else to develop medication, say for COVID or for the cure for cancer, we don't want to prevent that. We think it's important that once we as research agencies have funded the research, that our job is done. I mean, that research should be available for the benefit of humanity. And if somebody else can make money on the basis of new insights developed on the basis of that paper, we think that should be allowed. So we don't allow for non-commercial. We do allow for ND in certain circumstances, but we can talk about that at some other point. So this is just about to give you an idea why we select CC BY. It is basically because it is most in line with academic practice. Now, of course, needless to say, publishers who stand to lose by this have not particularly liked this rights retention strategy, and they have said things to authors that they cannot use the rights retention strategy, but there is absolutely no reason why you cannot. They also, and this is more tricky, they have said, before proceeding with your submission, you must agree to pay for an APC. And this is the most tricky one, because basically what they sometimes do is when you submit to a journal, that journal is a hybrid journal. So it has part of the journal behind the paywall and part of the journal in open access. That's what we call a hybrid journal. And so what they will do when you apply to publish behind the paywall in that journal is to say, no, we will not allow you to do that if you come with a CC BY license. We will shift you to the open access part of the journal, and you will need to pay for a fee. The trouble is that we as cOAlition S have said very clearly to our researchers, and this applies to all researchers, we will not pay for publication in a hybrid journal. And why we do this is because we want to push the publishers to transfer their journals to full open access. We have seen that hybrid journals are not the way to open access. They have stagnated in their open access contributions, and that's why we will not pay. The publishers, of course, don't say this to the researchers that we will not pay. So this is all smoke and mirrors. They make it difficult for researchers to apply the rights retention strategy. Don't forget, if you see these tricks, just withdraw the paper and go somewhere else, publish it elsewhere. I mean, the publishers will listen to us once they feel the weight that they lose out on important articles. The publisher will also sometimes ask you to sign a separate contract or ask you to respect an embargo. An embargo, as you probably know, is that you cannot share the article for 6 months or for 12 months after publication. We don't accept embargoes. We want papers to be immediately accessible in open access. Imagine under COVID that your paper came out and you couldn't share it for 6 months and you had an important insight about COVID. Would you really have to wait 6 months for that paper to become available to develop new therapies? It is completely ridiculous. We need open access now and publication in the interest of humanity, in the interest of the advancement of science. And of course, if you sign a contract for agreeing to an embargo period, you are in contradiction with the contract that you signed earlier with the grant agency about where you promised to publish in full and immediate open access when you signed the contract. So beware of what the publishers put in front of you. It is usually not done for your benefit, but for theirs. So this is very important to keep in mind. So we believe publishers are putting people in a difficult position with these contracts that contradict grant agreements, which they know full well, by the way, because we informed them. We said we wrote all 150 publishers a letter saying, this is how we will operate from now on. Beware, if somebody publishes a paper from you with a grant from us, these are the conditions that they work under. Despite this, they have not taken that into account and started a kind of a guerrilla war directly with authors. We believe very strongly that publishers have the right to reject articles that come with the rights retention language, that come with the CC BY license. That is their full right. They have a right to refuse service. That is fine. But they do not have the right, we believe, to confuse, mislead, or trick authors into violating their grant agreements. That is actually very dangerous. It could also be could also go to court. We have it on good information that they would lose such a court case, but of course it has never been tried yet, although I would love to see that go forward. So about the direction of travel of the rights retention strategy, you can think, well, you know, this is a set of research agencies doing this, fine, but that's still a minority. But what we see is that rights retention, as we know it, is really receiving a broad support. There's been the UNESCO Declaration of November 21. There's been other declarations by the G6. There's European University Association that put it on their agenda for 2025, and there's the European Council of June 2022 under the French presidency that sufficient intellectual rights should be retained to ensure open access. Even more importantly, at a different level, the universities, many universities in relevant jurisdictions have decided to adopt rights retention policies. We see 4 big universities in Norway that have adopted it wholesale, and in the meantime, 17 universities in the UK, including Cambridge and Aberdeen and Edinburgh and Birkbeck, have adopted rights retention policies. And this is very important for reasons that I will explain, namely, rights retention policies by universities are stronger than rights retention policies by agencies. This is basically how it works. Researchers license their institution to make a copy of the AAM immediately available. The university informs publishers of this new regulation. And that means that researchers don't even have to do anything anymore because they work under the umbrella of the university. Why is this important? Because universities, of course, are the direct employers of researchers, and then rights retention simply becomes a kind of a contractual obligation, something that you have to do as part of your contractual obligation with the university. And that's very powerful because this protects the researchers against publishers. If the CC BY is licensed by the university and the publisher tries to intervene in that and say to the author, well, you know, we don't really like that CC BY license, or we want you to pay for it, or that could be construed as the tort of procuring a breach of contract, and that is punishable by law. That is not something you can do. If you know that somebody has a contract to do a specific thing, you cannot lure them into another contract to do something else that is in contradiction with that previous contract. That is a basic aspect of law. Again, this has not been tested in court, and again, I would love to see it tested in court, but I don't think it will happen because universities are not typically litigious. And of course, publishers won't sue us because it is in their interest to maintain confusion about this issue. What is also important is that rights retention provides equality to researchers. Researchers with and without grants can make use of this to make their articles available open access while making sure that the university protects them. And of course, as we know, all articles in open access are more citable, more visible than articles behind a paywall. So this is also a matter of equality. Couple of take-home messages at the end of my talk here is very important. Article content belongs to the author, and the author decides how to use this. If you decide to give it away, that is your right as an individual author, but it is no longer your right when you work for a coalition as funder. Our position towards authors is, if you take our money, you have to do as we say, unfortunately. Right? I mean, we ask you to make those articles open access. That's a condition of our grants. If you don't like it, you don't have to take our money. So we also think we don't do this by force, but necessarily, but we do this because we think it's in the best interest of the author and in the best interest of science. I mean, author rights retention is therefore about ownership. It's not about compliance. It's not about ticking a box. It's about ownership. We want to empower authors to keep the ownership of their papers. Rights retention helps authors retain their rights, and at the same time, it is a tool to aid compliance with their funder agreement. And we believe an institutional rights retention policy is even more powerful. That is something that each of you could institute at their own institutions if they want to, or you can ask the people at your institution, why haven't you instituted a rights retention policy yet? If a University of Cambridge has done it, for instance, right, or Aberdeen. And the action, the action that we see here is indeed for various stakeholders in the academic enterprise to act, namely publishers deny authors their rights and grab them for themselves, but we believe that we as funders, as authors and as institutions can correct this state of affairs and make sure that authors retain their right going forward. On this slide, I have a bit of further information. Since the talk will be recorded, you can go there. There's a Coalition S website, there's our implementation roadmap, the journal checker tool that helps you identify journals where you need to apply the rights retention strategy. More info about Creative Commons licenses, but I will at this point turn over the paper for questions and discussions and stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Johan, so much for, sorry, just need to sort out our audio. There we go. Not quite the seamless transition we were hoping for. Thank you so much. It was a really, really thought-provoking talk, and I think full of an awful lot of very rich insights. I do hope people have some questions for us. I'm sure after all that material, there's bound to be some questions there. And if not, you should be asking questions. Oh, here we go. Brilliant. Someone has put a question in the chat box. However, if you do have questions, try and put them in the Q&A box instead, because it's easier for us to monitor them all in one place. However, our first question from Rakshinda Majib. Johan, oftentimes authors give up copyrights intentionally as they are overly excited to get their work published. Please advise how to overcome this dilemma.
Yes, I think this is basically a matter of education. I think authors really, I mean, this is lacking now. I think authors in their first year, I mean, of the PhD should get much more acquainted with aspects of copyright. So as to overcome this excitement, I mean, there really should be much more awareness about what copyright means and how you can protect it. It is true that this excitement that Rakshinda talks about has to do with the prestige aspects of certain journals. So, you know, you are accepted in a prestigious journal and nothing else counts. And this is also something that we need to address. I mean, we really believe that this entire notion of prestigious journals is not good for science. It is something that has poisoned science. Because basically we have gone to a system in science where the only thing that counts is peer-reviewed publications in highly prestigious journals. And this is not right. I mean, there are many more contributions to science than just the paper. So we should basically get rid of this prestige system. And this is also something that we have started in Europe with a movement called cOAra, another coalition for the advancement of research assessment, which will in the next few years try to change the mentality of researchers in making a much flatter playing field where prestige does not play a role and where all contributions to research are fully appreciated. So this is one of the things that needs to change. We need to stop being excited about publishing papers in prestigious journals. We need to start getting excited about all contributions each of us makes to the research process.
Thank you. Yes, and the new launch of the cOAra is such a brilliant initiative. We're very excited about it here at Form. So another question from Mahmoud Khalifa. I need some information about how Coalition S funds research publishing. Is it for individuals or institutions as well?
That depends. I mean, there's a variety actually. I mean, so some funders will provide funds for publishing to individual researchers in their research grants. So you can use part of the grants to pay for publication in Gold Open Access journals. Other funders don't do it directly, but they give block grants to universities. That's the case in the UK, for instance, and then those block grants can be used for open access publishing. So there really is other funders contribute to transformative agreements, so they don't pay directly, but they contribute to agreements with that are concluded by libraries and publishers. So there really is a huge variety in the way in which funders contribute to publishing. It can be via the institution, it can be via the individual. And so it really depends on the jurisdiction.
Thank you. A question from Kevin McCormick at Doha University. You mentioned some universities in the UK have adopted the RRS. Are there any MENA universities buying in? Because Kevin has often asked what peer institutions are doing in the region.
Well, this is why I'm here. Basically, I'm one of the reasons I accepted to this talk is to convince MENA universities to adopt this as well. I think it's good policy if your jurisdiction allows for it, because in some cases, of course, jurisdictions don't allow for it. This has to do with the type of copyright that is applicable in the relevant country. But if the jurisdiction with respect to copyright is and with respect to the university's role in it is based on that of the UK, then UK policies or UK university policies could easily be adopted in MENA. I don't know what the situation is, but this is really something that I would like to see go forward, of course. I have no knowledge at this time of rights retention policies being enacted at MENA universities. And we are following that situation very closely, of course, because for us, it's really important that all universities in the world adopt this so that it becomes a fait accompli for the publishers. It's very clear, you know, author accepted manuscripts belong to the author, belong to the university, and are protected by the university. The university wants to protect the intellectual rights of their researchers and of the intellectual achievements that the university stands for.
No,
and I think is very, very important going forward.
It's definitely something that's on the form, you know, front and center of our sort of long-term strategic goals and core priorities to help.
Yes, and of course, I will be very happy to put you in contact with those universities in the UK who have enacted it, the people who took the initiative there, because we were obviously in close contact with them. So if you need any help in the devising or formulating these rights retention policies at your university, I will be glad to help you do that.
Excellent. On that note, the next question is a nice segue here. I'm not sure of who's asking because they're marked anonymous, but anonymous attendee would like to say, first of all, thank you so much for such a great informative talk. And the question is, what roles and practical actions can librarians play in, first, raising awareness of researchers, and second, pushing administration, university administration to adopt these strategies?
Yes, well, as the anonymous person perhaps knows, is that the librarians have played a huge role in rights retention or in developing rights retention in their universities. In almost all cases in the UK, it was librarians who took the initiative to talk to their higher management to do this. And basically what they said to us in every case is, look, Coalition S is doing this. For us, this is really important because many of our researchers are here with these grants. They have to be able to do this. We have to help them in this. Secondly, this is also a question of equality. We have researchers with grants and without grants. We want to give all our researchers the same kind of possibilities. So please do this. It's the right thing to do, and you are under the cover of the demands of Coalition S. So basically, the Coalition S rights retention strategy was used as a catalyst by the librarians to enact this in their institutions and to convince their higher management to do this. You can see how they did it on the Coalition S blog, because we invited all of these librarians at their respective institutions to write a blog for us, a very brief blog, always the same questions, on how they talked to researchers, how they talked to higher management to get the ball rolling. So I would invite you to consult those blogs on our website. It's a blog that is called the Soapbox. It's immediately on our website in the right upper corner of our website at Coalition S, where you can find those. I think we have something like 16 blogs explaining the experience, the immediate experience of the librarians, of the people who enacted these policies at their various universities. So that can serve as help again for universities in MENA to enact rights retention policies at their universities as well.
Thank you for that answer. And again, it's so important to remember when you have questions, although we are working as an initiative to produce resources specifically for this region, there is a huge wealth of material available, particularly in Europe, in a number of the core initiative websites, with so many guidelines that can be adapted for the Arab region. We have one more question currently, but remember, if you have any more questions, do drop them in the chat box in the Q&A question section. However, Johan, Dr. Syed Hassan asks, what are the differential challenges in coalition research works for the smooth facilitation of the output work findings?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can I see it in the Q&A? Is it under...
if you wish, I can drop it into the chat box. 1 second.
The differential challenges. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the differential challenges for us are, the varied ways in which money is made available for publishing. That is always a challenge for us, because as I said, sometimes money is made available to universities via block grants. Sometimes it's made available directly to the researcher. This makes formulating a common policy difficult. There's no doubt about it. It also makes it difficult because it makes it difficult to put all that money together and make it available for publishing and exert pressure on publishers in a united way. But we are getting there. Other differential challenges, I would say, is also to convince the researchers that this is important and to export this to other countries. I mean, we have been successful in getting 28 organizations around the globe behind this. But still, when we talk to other funders, they are reluctant to do this because there is resistance, of course, from researchers who have been brought up in this prestige system and want to perpetuate it. And many people think that this is the only way forward. We really think that the current academic system, with its emphasis on research, on prestige, and with the lack of transparency in prices for open access publishing, that this is not the way to go forward, that we really need to reform research, the way in which it is done, the way, the role that prestige plays, and that we really need to reform research in order to be able to go forward. And rights retention is an important part of that, because it really empowers the researcher. It really tells the researcher his original rights, namely that as the original copyright holder, they are the master of their fates. They can really do this themselves, and they can contribute to open access and to better research in the future.
Thank you. Well, I think that's it from questions for now. And I think that was a really nice upbeat message to finish the event on. So once again, thank you, Johan, so much. This was a truly thought-provoking talk, and I'm sure all of us are going to go away and read all of the blog things that you've recommended, but also sit down and have a long, hard think about what more we can do to promote a transition away from a prestige-based publishing system and sort of ranking system in general. Before we finish though, I just want to let you know about some of our upcoming events. Those of you who joined us today, thank you again very much. If you want to come again, I know I recognize a number of names in the list. There's a lot of people who are coming to every single event, and we hope you will join us at the next one. This is from ORCID, who will be giving a talk about PIDs and transparency. So it'll be, again, a very interesting talk, and I do hope you will join us. That is in June. I can't believe we're nearly in June now already. I don't know where 2023 has gone. If you do want to join, there's a QR code here, and you can get the details there or just visit our website. In addition, as we mentioned before, the annual forum. So this is our flagship event each year. This year, we're delighted to be able to host it in Abu Dhabi with the partnership of Khalifa University and UNESCO. The theme is democratizing knowledge, the evolution of open science research ecosystems and research communities in the Arab world. The call for papers is still open. We're looking for panels, roundtables, online and in-person presentations. And you still have just over 6 weeks to submit a proposal. So I do hope you will consider joining us. Even if you don't want to present a paper, feel free to join us and register on the website as well. Finally, if you have enjoyed this event, please do take the time to fill out this survey, both so that I'm sure Johan would love to hear your feedback and how brilliant this talk was, but also because if there's anything else that you feel we didn't address, if there's more information you need, specific topics you'd like us to talk about, you need to fill in this survey. This is what we're using to plan the 2024 schedule and other individual events going forwards. So please do try and fill in this survey so that we can give you what you need and what you want. So once again, thank you so much to Johan and to Coalition S for joining us today. I'm clapping for everyone here. It's always slightly embarrassing when we do this because there's no one else clapping, but I feel a good speaker deserves a clap. So like I said, thank you. We are hugely grateful for you joining us and sharing some of your knowledge with us today. And I'm sure everyone else found it as interesting and as helpful, I think, as I did. So yes, we will leave the survey QR code up very briefly. Lots of nice thumbs up for you, Johan, there. Always nice to see. And we will be ending the event in a minute or two once you've had a chance to get the survey for the QR code.
Goodbye.
So yes, goodbye. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope to see you all, I guess, in about 3 weeks, a month when the next event is. So thank you and have a lovely rest of day.